Welcome to Bittensor Weekly, your source for truth for everything happening in the Bittensor ecosystem. I'm your host, and this is episode 1, Saturday, March 7th, 2026. This week, Inference Labs drops Lightning, a Rust-based protocol that could reshape how validators and miners communicate. The Bittensor protocol itself autonomously bought back over 600 dTAO to stabilize alpha prices across 31 subnets. And Ridge's AI on Subnet 62 launched Ridgeline, a product where you assign a GitHub issue and an autonomous agent writes, tests, and ships the code. It's live today, and it's free to try. Plus, Yuma just dropped their State of Bittensor Volume 2 report. Bitcast is landing enterprise repeat customers, and will break down what dTAO emissions actually mean in this week's Bittensor 101. Let's get into it. dTAO is trading at $192.74 as of Thursday, March 5th, up about 1% over the past 24 hours. Market cap sits at $2.07 billion. 24-hour trading volume came in strong at $146.8 million. The network has 10.73 million dTAO in circulating supply out of the 21 million hard cap, with 7.31 million dTAO staked. That's a 68.2% staking rate. We're still in the post-halving environment since December 15th, meaning 7,200 dTAO per day in maximum emissions, though effective daily output is about 3,600 dTAO. All 128 subnet slots remain full. Registration cost is sitting at 552 dTAO. That's about $106,500, which tells you something about how competitive it is to hold a slot right now. Exchange balance is ticked up by about 16,000 dTAO over the past week, something worth keeping an eye on. Number 1, Lightning Protocol launch. On March 4th, Inference Labs, the team behind Subnet 2, released Lightning, a Rust-based validator-miner communication layer for Bittensor. This replaces the standard Python-based Subnet template with something dramatically faster. We're talking about a fundamental infrastructure upgrade for how subnets operate. Alex D. Rocks highlighted the performance comparisons on X, and the response from the community was strong. This is the kind of unglamorous but critical infrastructure work that raises the ceiling for every subnet on the network. Number 2, Protocol dTAO Buyback. On March 3rd, the Bittensor protocol autonomously purchased 607 dTAO, roughly $113,000 worth, and distributed across 31 subnets to stabilize alpha prices. This is the buyback mechanism working as designed. When alpha prices dip below fair value, the protocol itself steps in to provide a floor. It's one of the more elegant features of dTAO, and it happened entirely on-chain, no human intervention required. Number 3, Yuma State of Bittensor Volume 2. Dropped today, March 5th, Barry Silbert shared it with his nearly 800,000 followers, calling it everything you need to know about Bittensor latest and greatest in one place. The report from Yuma, which is DCG's Bittensor arm, covers token dynamics post-halving, subnet token performance, YAM performance, and what they call the tipping point, the moment subnet outputs start approaching closed-source alternatives. They highlight Ridges on SN62, Score on SN44, Yanez on SN54, and Targon on SN4 as subnets to watch. The team also appeared on the Alea Research Market Cap podcast this week, where COO Greg Saipo laid out why Bittensor is the economic incentive layer for AI. And number 4, the Stillcore Thesis goes viral. On March 1st, Stillcore Capital published the Bittensor Thesis, a comprehensive investment case for dTAO. It racked up 288,000 impressions and 922 bookmarks on X. When a traditional finance-adjacent fund drops something with that kind of engagement, it signals the institutional conversation around Bittensor is accelerating. Number 5, OpenAI and the Department of War. Sam Altman announced OpenAI signed an agreement to deploy their models on the Department of War's classified network. This triggered a wave of discussion across the Bittensor community, with OTF and co-founder Jacob Steves weighing in on why decentralized open-source AI matters more than ever. Tau Templar summed it.
Some other notable developments this week. The Bittensor Ideathon in Nairobi at the Africa Summit, Medical AI won first place. The global footprint of Bittensor development continues to expand. Beijing Developer Meetup coming up March 7th, organized by HackQuest, bringing Bittensor to the Asian developer community. The Tao.com wallet is adding thousands of new users, with Keith Singery publishing walkthrough guides for onboarding. Tau Templar released a 7-Bittensor scam subnets video and a DIY cold storage wallet tutorial. Important community education. Subnet 32, AI detection, was flagged as at risk of deregistration despite being one of the most commercially ready products. Alex D. Rocks called it out as a governance conversation the community needs to have. D-Search on SN22 announced integration with Numinous on SN6, 240-plus forecasting agents feeding predictive intelligence into their search platform. And on-chain alerts showed a whale buying over 5,000 TAO worth of Cartha SN35 alpha in a single day, nearly $1 million. Subnet-level conviction plays are getting serious. Now let's get into the Subnet spotlight. This week's spotlight goes to Ridge's AI on Subnet 62, which just launched Ridgeline, their consumer-facing product on March 5th. Ridgeline is the product layer on top of Subnet 62. Behind it, miners on Bittensor compete to build and improve the autonomous coding agent itself. Agents are continuously evaluated and scored, driving rapid iteration. Ridgeline is where those agents get put to work for real users. Here's how it works. You assign a GitHub issue to a Ridgeline agent. It reads your repository for context, begins work, generates and tests patches automatically, and works in parallel with your team, completing tasks without supervision. It's like having another engineer you can assign tickets to, except this one runs on decentralized infrastructure through Targon and Chutes. During the open beta, there's no paywall. New users get 10 free credits to start. You can sign up right now at ridges.ai. Ridges laid out 4 reasons in their launch thread for why this matters, and they're worth understanding. First, revenue. This is a product developers can pay for. Autonomous code execution has direct economic value. This isn't a speculative subnet building toward a future use case. It's generating income now. Second, feedback loops. Real users with real repositories filing real tickets means the agents get better faster. Performance improves when the tasks matter. Third, ecosystem visibility. When one subnet ships a usable product, it sets a precedent for the whole network. Adoption compounds. Fourth, abstraction. Users don't need to know it's Bittensor. They care about results. The value proposition stands on its own. Now the numbers. Ridges sits at number 3 in emission share at 4.66%, behind only Chutes at 10.31%, and a fine at 8.14%. Its alpha token trades at $8.99 with a market cap of $38.2 million, making it the 4th largest subnet by market capitalization. The team has been building publicly and transparently, earning endorsements from Dread Bongo, Mark Jeffrey, and the wider community. DSV Fund invested $300,000 into Ridges, and the team has discussed targeting the $400 billion per year software engineering market. Keenan from the community noted that Ridges was one of his top performers in his trusted stake portfolio allocation experiment. Dread Bongo said, Ridges not only has the potential to compete with Claude and Cursor, but through incentives, it can improve at a rate closed systems simply can't match. One more detail worth noting, inference for Ridgeline runs across Bittensor infrastructure, specifically Targon on SN4 and Chutes on SN64. This is subnet composability in action. Ridges doesn't run its own compute, it pulls from other subnets, which means value flows through the network rather than leaking out. Ridgeline represents a thesis for what Bittensor subnets become when they stop being infrastructure experiments and start being products. The comparison to Cursor and Claude Code is deliberate. Ridges is competing in the same market as $60 billion AI companies, using an open incentive mechanism that rewards better performance automatically. For context, Anthropic spent over $100 million getting Claude to a 75% SWE bench success rate. Ridges miners achieved 66.8% from zero in 45 days for roughly $650,000 in emissions. That's the efficiency of decentralized competition. If Ridges can sustain this trajectory, Ridgeline becomes one of the strongest proof points that decentralized AI can compete at the product level, and you can try it yourself right now for free. Moving to the alpha portfolio.
In future episodes, this is where I'll walk through a real portfolio of subnet alpha positions, entries, exits, reasoning, and performance. We're still setting that up, so for now, let me share what the data tells us about where money is flowing this week. The top 5 subnets by market cap: Chutes at $90.2 million, Affine at $41 million, Ridges at $38.2 million, Targon at $37 million, and Lima.io at $32.2 million. Chutes remains the clear leader by a wide margin. On the biggest movers, the upside, Minos on SN107 was up 40%, Bitquant on SN15 up 31%, and Hippias on SN75, Constri Born's data transfer layer, up 29%. On the downside, Rich Kids of TA on SN110 fell 20%, 8Ball on SN125 dropped 16%, and Score on SN44 was down about 13%.
The key metric in dTAO is the relationship between alpha price and emissions. When tau flows into a subnet, meaning people buy its alpha, that subnet earns more emissions. When people sell, emissions decrease. This creates a market-based feedback loop where capital allocation determines resource allocation. The subnets that generate real revenue in real products tend to attract sustained inflows, which compounds into higher emissions, better miners, and stronger output. If I were building a portfolio right now, I'd be watching the revenue-generating subnets closely. Chutes for inference, ridges for coding agents, Bitcast for attention economy marketing. These have business models, not just technology demonstrations. Now for Bittensor 101. Since we talked about emissions several times today, let's break down how they actually work. Before dTAO, the old system called the root network determined how much tau each subnet earned. Validators in the root network voted on subnet weights. It was a popularity contest with capital. dTAO changed everything. Now, each subnet has its own token, called an alpha token. When you buy a subnet's alpha, you're effectively injecting tau into that subnet's liquidity pool. The protocol tracks these inflows across all 128 subnets and allocates daily emissions proportionally. More tau flowing in means more emissions flowing out. Here's the beauty of it. This means the market decides which subnets are valuable, not a committee, not a governance vote, not a foundation, the market. If a subnet builds something useful and people invest in its alpha, it earns more resources to reward its miners and validators. If it builds nothing, money flows out, emissions drop, and eventually it gets deregistered when someone else is willing to pay the 552 tau registration cost for that slot. This is what people mean when they call Bittensor a free market for intelligence. The protocol's buyback mechanism we discussed earlier adds a safety net. When alpha prices dip below a threshold, the protocol buys back alpha to prevent crashes. But the fundamental direction is set by real capital flowing to real value. To put it in traditional terms, imagine if the stock market automatically fired the CEO and replaced the company every time a stock hit zero. That's roughly what Bittensor does with subnets. It's Darwinian capital allocation applied to AI development. That's it for episode 1 of Bittensor Weekly. If you found this useful, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss next week's episode. We'll be tracking everything from subnet launches to protocol upgrades to the alpha positions worth watching. Sign up for the companion newsletter, link in the description, for deeper data tables, source links, and the metrics behind the stories. I'll see you next Saturday. Stay staked.